Question 1. Assessment of the integrity of an applicant's submitted academic qualifications for the Alsham private university entrance exam, when initial review reveals potential inconsistencies with the stated curriculum of their previous institution. Option A. Overlook the identified inconsistencies in the academic transcripts, focusing solely on the applicant's stated interest in the program. Option B. Expedite the review process for this applicant, assuming the inconsistencies are minor and will not impact their academic performance at Alsham Private University. Option C. Conduct a thorough verification of the applicant's academic transcripts and seek official documentation from their previous institution to confirm the equivalence and rigor of their prior studies, in accordance with Alsham Private University entrance exam regulations. Option D. Accept the applicant's verbal assurance that their previous coursework is equivalent to the required standards, prioritizing the timely fulfillment of enrollment quotas. Correct answer is C. Conduct a thorough verification of the applicant's academic transcripts and seek official documentation from their previous institution to confirm the equivalence and rigor of their prior studies, in accordance with Alsham Private University entrance exam regulations. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire for academic advancement and the university's commitment to academic integrity and fair assessment practices. The university entrance exam regulations, as stipulated by Alsham Private University, mandate a rigorous and unbiased evaluation process. Misrepresenting qualifications or attempting to gain an unfair advantage directly contravenes these regulations and the ethical principles of academic honesty. The correct approach involves a thorough and objective assessment of the applicant's submitted documentation against the established Alsham Private University entrance requirements. This approach upholds the university's commitment to admitting students who meet the defined academic standards and possess genuine qualifications. Specifically, it aligns with the Alsham Private University entrance exam regulations that emphasize the verification of all submitted credentials and prohibit any form of misrepresentation. This ensures fairness to all applicants and maintains the academic rigor of the university. An incorrect approach that involves overlooking discrepancies in the submitted academic transcripts, perhaps due to pressure to meet enrollment targets, would be a direct violation of the Alsham Private University entrance exam regulations. This failure to verify credentials undermines the integrity of the admissions process and creates an unfair playing field for other applicants who have adhered to the rules. Another incorrect approach, such as accepting a verbal assurance of equivalent qualifications without documented proof, also fails to comply with the Alsham Private University entrance exam regulations. These regulations typically require verifiable evidence of prior academic achievement. This approach introduces an unacceptable level of subjectivity and risk, potentially admitting students who do not possess the foundational knowledge required for university-level study. A further incorrect approach, which might involve expediting the review process for this applicant without proper due diligence, would similarly breach the Alsham Private University entrance exam regulations. All applications must undergo a consistent and thorough evaluation to ensure fairness and adherence to standards. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic review of all application materials against the explicit requirements of the Alsham Private University entrance exam regulations. When discrepancies arise, the professional course of action is to seek clarification and verifiable documentation from the applicant. If the required documentation cannot be provided, or if misrepresentation is confirmed, the application should be processed according to the established procedures for rejected applications, prioritizing academic integrity and adherence to regulatory frameworks. Question 2. Which approach would be most appropriate for Alsham Private University to ensure compliance with data privacy regulations when considering the collection of additional personal information from prospective students for admissions purposes? Option A. Outsourcing the entire data collection and management process to a third-party vendor without an internal review of their data handling practices. Option B. Conducting a comprehensive data protection impact assessment to identify potential risks and mitigation strategies before data collection commences. Option C. Focusing on leveraging the collected data for targeted marketing campaigns to attract more applicants. Option D. immediately collecting all potentially useful data from applicants to maximize the information available for admissions decisions. Correct answer is B. Conducting a comprehensive data protection impact assessment to identify potential risks and mitigation strategies before data collection commences. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the university's need for accurate student data with the ethical obligation to protect sensitive personal information. The Alsham Private University Entrance Exam Regulations, specifically Article 15 concerning data privacy and security, mandate that all collected student data must be handled with the utmost confidentiality and used solely for the stated purpose of admissions. Misinterpreting or misusing this data can lead to severe reputational damage for the university and potential legal repercussions. The correct approach involves a thorough impact assessment that systematically evaluates the potential risks and benefits associated with the proposed data collection and usage. This assessment must align with the principles outlined in Article 15 of the Alsham Private University Entrance Exam Regulations, which emphasizes proportionality, necessity, and transparency in data handling. By identifying potential privacy breaches, security vulnerabilities, and the ethical implications of data use, the university can implement appropriate safeguards and ensure compliance before proceeding. This proactive measure is crucial for maintaining trust with prospective students and upholding the university's commitment to ethical data practices. An approach that prioritizes immediate data collection without a prior assessment fails to adhere to Article 15 by potentially exposing sensitive information without adequate security measures or a clear understanding of the data's impact. This constitutes a significant regulatory and ethical failure, as it disregards the principle of data minimization and purpose limitation. An approach that focuses solely on the perceived benefits of data collection, such as improving marketing strategies, without adequately considering the privacy implications and regulatory requirements, also violates Article 15. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and in disregard for the ethical obligations towards prospective students' personal data. An approach that delegates the entire data handling process to an external vendor without conducting an internal impact assessment and ensuring the vendor's compliance with Alsham Private University Entrance Exam Regulations is also problematic. This can lead to a loss of control over data and potential breaches if the vendor's practices are not rigorously vetted against the university's regulatory obligations. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk assessment framework. This framework should begin with identifying the data to be collected, its intended use, and the potential stakeholders. Subsequently, a thorough analysis of potential risks, e.g., unauthorized access, data misuse, noncompliance, and benefits should be conducted. Mitigation strategies should then be developed and implemented, followed by ongoing monitoring and review to ensure continued compliance with the Alsham Private University Entrance Exam Regulations and ethical standards. Question 3. Implementation of a new admissions policy at Alsham Private University requires the admissions committee to evaluate applicants for the upcoming academic year. The university is facing budget constraints, and there is internal discussion about potentially prioritizing applicants who demonstrate a strong likelihood of future financial support for the university, either through family connections or potential alumni engagement, alongside their academic qualifications. The committee must decide on the most appropriate approach to ensure compliance with Alsham Private University's regulatory framework and ethical standards. Option A. Implement a quota system that allocates a certain percentage of admission slots to applicants from affluent backgrounds, believing this will indirectly benefit the university through increased philanthropic opportunities. Option B. Rely primarily on the recommendations of department heads and faculty members who may have personal relationships with certain applicants, assuming their judgment reflects the applicant's suitability. Option C. Prioritize applicants whose families have a history of significant financial contributions to the university, or who express a strong commitment to future alumni donations, as this can help alleviate current budget constraints. Option D. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment of each applicant's academic preparedness and potential for success in their chosen program, ensuring all admissions decisions are based on merit and suitability, irrespective of their financial background or potential future contributions. Correct answer is D. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment of each applicant's academic preparedness and potential for success in their chosen program, ensuring all admissions decisions are based on merit and suitability, irrespective of their financial background or potential future contributions. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's immediate financial needs and the long-term implications of its admissions policies. The admissions committee must exercise careful judgment to balance these competing interests while adhering strictly to the Alsham private university's regulatory framework, which prioritizes academic integrity and fair selection processes. The correct approach involves a thorough impact assessment that considers the academic preparedness of all applicants, regardless of their background or any potential financial contributions they might represent. This approach is right because it aligns with the Alsham private university's stated commitment to academic excellence and equitable admissions, as outlined in its internal admissions charter and the guiding principles of the Ministry of Higher Education's accreditation standards. These regulations mandate that admissions decisions be based on merit and suitability for the chosen program, ensuring that admitted students have the foundational knowledge and skills to succeed. A comprehensive impact assessment in this context would involve evaluating the academic records, standardized test scores, if applicable, and any supplementary materials provided by all applicants to determine their potential for academic success. It would also consider the potential impact on the overall academic profile of the incoming cohort and the university's reputation. An incorrect approach would be to prioritize applicants based on their perceived ability to contribute financially to the university, such as through larger donations from their families or potential future alumni contributions. This fails to adhere to the Alsham private university's admissions charter, which explicitly prohibits financial considerations from influencing admissions decisions. Such a practice would also violate the ethical principles of fairness and equal opportunity, potentially leading to the admission of less qualified students over more deserving ones, thereby undermining the academic integrity of the university. Furthermore, it could contravene the Ministry of Higher Education's guidelines on transparent and merit-based admissions, risking accreditation issues. Another incorrect approach would be to solely rely on the recommendations of faculty members who may have personal biases or vested interests in admitting certain students, without a standardized evaluation process. This bypasses the established procedures for assessing academic merit and could lead to inconsistent and unfair admissions decisions, violating the university's commitment to a structured and objective selection process. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic evaluation of all relevant factors against the established regulatory framework and ethical guidelines. This includes 1. Clearly identifying the core objective, admitting qualified students and any potential conflicts. 2. Consulting the relevant university policies, admissions charter, and external regulatory requirements. 3. Gathering objective data and evidence for all applicants. 4. Conducting a comprehensive impact assessment that considers academic, ethical, and reputational implications. 5. Documenting the decision-making process and the rationale behind each admission decision. 6. Seeking consensus or review from the appropriate committee or governing body to ensure accountability and adherence to standards. Question 4. The control framework reveals a proposal to revise the admissions criteria for the upcoming academic year at Alsham Private University. The admissions committee is considering introducing new weighting factors for extracurricular activities and standardized test scores. What is the most appropriate approach to ensure the integrity and fairness of this revision? Option A. Rely on the personal judgment and experience of the admissions committee members to determine the new weighting factors without formal analysis. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment to evaluate the potential effects of the revised criteria on applicant pools, diversity, and academic standards, consulting relevant university policies and seeking input from academic departments. Option C. Prioritize the preferences of the university's marketing department in setting the new criteria to attract a specific profile of students. Option D. Immediately implement the revised criteria to streamline the admissions process and avoid delays, assuming the changes will be beneficial. The correct answer is B. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment to evaluate the potential effects of the revised criteria on applicant pools, diversity, and academic standards, consulting relevant university policies, and seeking input from academic departments. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's need for efficient resource allocation with the ethical obligation to ensure a fair and transparent admissions process. The admissions committee must consider the potential impact of their decisions on both individual applicants and the overall academic integrity of Alsham Private University. Careful judgment is required to avoid bias and ensure that all applicants are evaluated based on merit and adherence to established criteria. The correct approach involves a thorough and objective impact assessment of the proposed changes on the admissions process. This means systematically evaluating how the new criteria might affect different applicant groups, the university's diversity goals, and the overall quality of the incoming student body. It requires consulting relevant university policies, admissions guidelines, and potentially seeking input from academic departments to understand the potential consequences. This approach is ethically justified as it prioritizes fairness, transparency, and evidence-based decision-making, aligning with principles of good governance and responsible institutional practice. It ensures that any changes are implemented with a clear understanding of their ramifications, minimizing unintended negative consequences. An incorrect approach would be to implement the changes without a formal impact assessment. This failure to evaluate the consequences could lead to discriminatory outcomes, inadvertently disadvantaging certain applicant demographics without justification. It also undermines transparency, as applicants and faculty may not understand the rationale behind the altered criteria or their potential effects. Another incorrect approach would be to rely solely on anecdotal evidence or the opinions of a few individuals without systematic data collection or analysis. This is ethically problematic as it introduces subjectivity and potential bias into the decision-making process, compromising the integrity of the admission system. A further incorrect approach would be to prioritize speed of implementation over thoroughness, making hasty decisions without considering the long-term implications. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for the potential negative impacts on applicants and the university's reputation. Professionals should approach such situations by first identifying the core objective of the proposed change. Then, they should define the scope of the impact assessment, considering all relevant stakeholders and potential consequences. This should be followed by data gathering, analysis, and the development of mitigation strategies for any identified negative impacts. Finally, the findings and recommendations should be clearly communicated to relevant decision-makers, ensuring an informed and responsible outcome. Question 5. During the evaluation of potential data collection methods for the Alsham Private University entrance exam, which approach best balances the need for comprehensive applicant assessment with the ethical imperative to protect applicant privacy and ensure fairness? Option A. Request only official academic transcripts and standardized test scores, with optional fields for extracurricular achievements. Option B. Implement a multi-stage process where initial screening uses only standardized test scores, followed by requests for academic transcripts and a brief personal statement for shortlisted candidates. Option C. Collect detailed demographic information, family background, and personal aspirations alongside academic transcripts and standardized test scores. Option D. Gather extensive psychological profiles and health records to assess an applicant's long-term success potential. The correct answer is C. Collect detailed demographic information, family background, and personal aspirations alongside academic transcripts and standardized test scores. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's need for accurate admissions data with the ethical obligation to protect applicant privacy and ensure fairness. The admissions committee must consider the potential impact of their data collection methods on applicants and the integrity of the admissions process itself. Careful judgment is required to select an approach that is both informative and compliant with Alsham Private University's internal policies and any overarching regulatory guidelines for educational institutions in its jurisdiction. The correct approach involves a targeted and transparent data collection strategy. This method is professionally sound because it respects applicant privacy by only requesting information directly relevant to assessing academic potential and suitability for specific programs. It aligns with ethical principles of data minimization and purpose limitation, ensuring that data is collected for a legitimate and clearly defined purpose. Furthermore, transparency about why certain data is collected builds trust with applicants and avoids any perception of intrusive or unnecessary scrutiny, which is crucial for maintaining the university's reputation and adhering to best practices in admissions. An approach that involves collecting extensive personal details beyond academic qualifications is professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a violation of the principle of data minimization. Collecting unnecessary personal information can lead to privacy breaches, potential misuse of data, and can create an intimidating or unfair impression for applicants, potentially deterring qualified candidates. It also raises ethical concerns about the university's respect for individual privacy. Another incorrect approach, collecting only basic academic scores without any context, is also professionally flawed. While it respects privacy by collecting minimal data, it fails to meet the university's legitimate need for a comprehensive understanding of an applicant's potential. This can lead to inaccurate admissions decisions, potentially overlooking promising candidates who may have had extenuating circumstances affecting their scores but possess strong qualitative attributes. It undermines the purpose of a holistic admissions review and can result in suboptimal cohort selection, impacting the academic quality of the university. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the university's admissions objectives, a thorough review of relevant internal policies, and any applicable external regulations concerning data privacy and fairness in education. Professionals should critically assess each potential data collection method against these objectives and principles, prioritizing approaches that are both effective in gathering necessary information and ethically sound in their respect for applicant rights and privacy. A risk assessment of each approach, considering potential negative impacts on applicants and the university, is also a vital step. Question 6. Compliance review shows that Alsham Private University's admissions process may be inadvertently creating barriers for applicants from diverse socioeconomic backgrounds. Which approach best addresses this concern while upholding the university's commitment to academic excellence and equitable opportunity? Option A. Conduct a detailed impact assessment of current admissions criteria and processes to identify and mitigate any disproportionate negative effects on applicants from various socioeconomic strata, and propose targeted adjustments or support mechanisms. Option B. Implement rapid, superficial changes to admissions criteria to quickly increase the representation of students from diverse socioeconomic backgrounds. Option C. Reiterate that current admissions criteria are strictly merit-based and therefore inherently fair to all applicants. Option D. Focus on setting aggressive recruitment targets for students from underrepresented backgrounds, without a detailed analysis of existing admission barriers. The correct answer is A. Conduct a detailed impact assessment of current admissions criteria and processes to identify and mitigate any disproportionate negative effects on applicants from various socioeconomic strata, and propose targeted adjustments or support mechanisms. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's desire to attract a diverse student body and the need to maintain academic integrity and fair admissions processes. The admissions committee must navigate potential biases, ensure equitable treatment of all applicants, and adhere to Alsham Private University's stated admission policies, which are implicitly governed by the principles of fairness and non-discrimination expected of any educational institution. The challenge lies in identifying and mitigating any systemic issues that might inadvertently disadvantage certain groups of applicants, particularly those from less privileged backgrounds, without compromising the university's standards. The correct approach involves a comprehensive impact assessment that systematically evaluates how current admissions criteria and processes might disproportionately affect applicants from various socioeconomic backgrounds. This approach is ethically sound and aligns with the principles of fairness and equity. By analyzing the outcomes of existing policies, the university can identify potential barriers or unintended consequences. This allows for data-driven adjustments to admissions criteria or the introduction of supportive measures, such as targeted outreach or revised assessment methods, to ensure a more inclusive and equitable admissions process. This proactive and analytical method upholds the university's commitment to providing opportunities to a wide range of qualified students while maintaining its academic reputation. An approach that focuses solely on increasing the number of students from underrepresented backgrounds, without a thorough analysis of the underlying causes or potential impacts, risks superficial solutions. This could lead to a perception of tokenism or a failure to address systemic issues, potentially undermining the university's long-term goals and its commitment to genuine inclusivity. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss concerns about potential disparities by asserting that current criteria are purely merit-based. This overlooks the reality that merit can be influenced by external factors and that admissions processes themselves can inadvertently create disadvantages. Such a stance fails to acknowledge the ethical responsibility to ensure that admissions are as fair and accessible as possible to all qualified individuals, regardless of their background. Finally, an approach that prioritizes speed and ease of implementation over rigorous analysis might involve making arbitrary changes to admissions targets without understanding their broader implications. This could lead to unintended negative consequences, such as a decline in academic standards or a perception of unfairness among applicants, thereby failing to achieve the desired positive impact and potentially damaging the university's reputation. The professional decision-making process in such situations requires a commitment to ethical principles, a thorough understanding of the university's mission and policies, and a willingness to engage in data-driven analysis. Professionals must prioritize fairness, equity, and transparency, actively seeking to identify and address any potential biases or systemic disadvantages within the admissions framework. This involves a continuous cycle of assessment, evaluation, and refinement to ensure that the university's practices are both effective and ethically sound. Question 7. Performance analysis shows that Alsham Private University is facing pressure to meet its enrollment targets for the upcoming academic year, and some internal stakeholders are suggesting that admissions decisions should be influenced by factors beyond academic merit to ensure target numbers are met. A new applicant has strong financial backing, and their family has indicated a willingness to make significant future donations to the university. But their academic profile is only moderately strong compared to other applicants. The admissions committee is debating how to proceed. Which of the following approaches best aligns with professional ethical standards and the integrity of the admissions process at Alsham Private University? Option A. Focus on the applicant's potential to pay higher tuition fees, even if their academic qualifications are not as strong as other candidates. To help meet enrollment and revenue targets, Option B. Prioritize this applicant due to their family's expressed willingness to make substantial donations, as this will benefit the university financially. Option C. Evaluate the applicant strictly based on the published academic admission criteria, ensuring fairness and objectivity, and consider their financial background only in terms of their ability to meet tuition obligations. Option D. Expedite the admission of this applicant because their family has indicated they can influence other potential donors, which would be a significant benefit to the university. The correct answer is C. Evaluate the applicant strictly based on the published academic admission criteria, ensuring fairness and objectivity, and consider their financial background only in terms of their ability to meet tuition obligations. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the university's immediate financial needs with its long-term reputation and the integrity of its admissions process. The pressure to meet enrollment targets can create a conflict of interest, potentially leading to decisions that compromise ethical standards and regulatory compliance. Careful judgment is required to ensure that decisions are not solely driven by financial expediency, but are grounded in fairness, transparency, and adherence to Alsham Private University's established admission policies and any relevant governing regulations for private higher education institutions in its jurisdiction. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough, objective review of all applications, adhering strictly to the established admission criteria and the university's stated policies. This ensures fairness and equal opportunity for all applicants, regardless of their perceived financial contribution. This approach is justified by the ethical obligation to maintain academic integrity and uphold the reputation of Alsham Private University. It aligns with the principle of merit-based admissions, which is fundamental to the credibility of any educational institution. Furthermore, it avoids any appearance of impropriety or preferential treatment, which could lead to regulatory scrutiny or damage to the university's standing. Incorrect approaches analysis. Prioritizing applications from individuals who express a willingness to pay higher tuition fees, even if their academic qualifications are borderline, is ethically unsound and potentially violates principles of fair admissions. This approach creates a two-tiered system, undermining the meritocratic ideal and potentially leading to the admission of underqualified students, which can negatively impact academic standards and the university's reputation. It also opens the university to accusations of corruption or bias. Accepting applications solely based on the potential for future donations from the applicant's family, without a rigorous assessment of their academic suitability, is also a failure. This prioritizes financial relationships over educational suitability, compromising the academic mission of the university. It can lead to the admission of students who are not prepared for the academic rigor, potentially increasing dropout rates and lowering overall academic performance. This approach also creates an unfair advantage for those with wealthy connections, ignoring the established admission criteria in favor of individuals who can expedite the application process or offer other non-academic benefits, is a direct contravention of university policy and ethical admissions practices. This approach introduces subjective and potentially corruptible factors into the admissions process, eroding trust and fairness. It can lead to the admission of less qualified candidates, impacting the quality of the student body and the university's academic standing. Professional reasoning. Professionals in university admissions should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes transparency, fairness, and adherence to established policies and ethical guidelines. This involves 1. Clearly defining and consistently applying admission criteria. 2. Establishing a robust review process that minimizes bias. 3. Maintaining a clear separation between admissions decisions and financial considerations, other than standard tuition fees. 4. Seeking guidance from university leadership and legal counsel when faced with complex or ethically ambiguous situations. 5. Documenting all decisions and the rationale behind them to ensure accountability. Question 8. Operational review demonstrates that Alsham Private University is facing a significant shortfall in its projected enrollment numbers for the upcoming academic year, creating pressure to meet targets. The admissions committee has received a number of applications from individuals who do not fully meet the published academic entry requirements, but are perceived to have strong potential for future alumni engagement and financial support for the university. The Dean of Admissions is considering a proposal to admit a limited number of these applicants, arguing it will bolster enrollment and future fundraising efforts. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the regulatory framework and ethical guidelines for Alsham Private University's admissions process? Option A. Create a special category for admission for applicants with perceived potential for future financial support, bypassing the standard academic review process for these individuals. Option B. Strictly adhere to the published academic entry requirements for all applicants, ensuring a fair and merit-based selection process, and explore alternative strategies for meeting enrollment targets and fundraising. Option C. Allow individual admissions officers to make discretionary decisions on borderline cases based on their personal assessment of an applicant's potential value to the university, outside of the established criteria. Option D. Prioritize the admission of applicants who demonstrate strong potential for future financial contributions or have influential connections, even if they do not fully meet the academic entry requirements. The correct answer is B. Strictly adhere to the published academic entry requirements for all applicants, ensuring a fair and merit-based selection process, and explore alternative strategies for meeting enrollment targets and fundraising. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's immediate financial needs and the long-term integrity of its admissions process. The pressure to meet enrollment targets can tempt decision-makers to overlook established criteria, potentially compromising the academic standards and reputation of Alsham Private University. Careful judgment is required to balance institutional goals with ethical obligations and regulatory compliance. The correct approach involves a thorough and objective review of all applications, adhering strictly to the published admission criteria and the university's established policies. This ensures fairness and equity for all applicants, regardless of external pressures. This approach is justified by the Alsham Private University's regulatory framework, which mandates transparent and merit-based admissions. Upholding these principles is crucial for maintaining the university's accreditation and public trust. Any deviation from these established criteria would violate the spirit and letter of these regulations, potentially leading to sanctions and reputational damage. An incorrect approach would be to prioritize applications based on perceived potential for future financial contribution or personal connections. This directly contravenes the principle of equal opportunity and fair assessment enshrined in the university's admission policies. Such a decision would be ethically unsound, as it introduces bias and undermines the academic meritocracy the university aims to foster. Furthermore, it could be seen as a violation of the university's charter and any governing regulations pertaining to admissions integrity. Another incorrect approach would be to bypass the standard review process for a select group of applicants based on anecdotal evidence of their suitability. This bypasses established due diligence and quality control mechanisms. It introduces subjectivity and the risk of overlooking qualified candidates or admitting underqualified ones, thereby compromising the academic rigor of the student body and potentially violating regulatory requirements for standardized admissions procedures. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the university's mission, values, and regulatory obligations. When faced with conflicting pressures, professionals should 1. Identify the core issue and potential conflicts. 2. Consult relevant policies, regulations, and ethical guidelines. 3. Seek objective data and evidence to support any decision. 4. Consider the long-term implications for the institution and its stakeholders. 5. If necessary, consult with legal counsel or ethics committees. 6. Document the decision-making process and the rationale behind the final decision. Question 9. Operational review demonstrates that a prospective student, whose application was initially flagged for potential discrepancies in submitted documentation, has a close familial relationship with a senior university administrator. The Dean of Admissions has informally requested expedited processing and favorable consideration for this applicant, citing the need to meet enrollment targets for the upcoming semester. The review committee is now deliberating on how to proceed with this application. Option A. Expedite the application process and approve it based on the dean's recommendation to meet enrollment targets, assuming the dean has exercised due diligence. Option B. Inform the dean that the application will be processed according to standard procedures, but do not conduct a thorough review as the enrollment deadline is imminent. Option C. Initiate a formal, independent review of the applicant's file by a designated subcommittee, ensuring all documentation is verified against university policy and any applicable regulatory guidelines, irrespective of the dean's informal request or enrollment pressures. Option D. Forward the application directly to the university president for a final decision, bypassing the standard admissions committee review process. The correct answer is C. Initiate a formal, independent review of the applicant's file by a designated subcommittee, ensuring all documentation is verified against university policy and any applicable regulatory guidelines, irrespective of the dean's informal request or enrollment pressures. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's immediate financial needs and the long-term integrity of its admissions process. The pressure to meet enrollment targets can tempt individuals to overlook or downplay irregularities, potentially compromising the fairness and credibility of the university. Careful judgment is required to balance institutional pressures with ethical obligations and regulatory compliance. The correct approach involves a thorough, objective investigation of the alleged irregularities, adhering strictly to Alsham private universities' established admissions policies and any relevant governing regulations. This approach prioritizes transparency, fairness, and due diligence. It ensures that all applicants are evaluated on merit and that the admissions process remains robust and defensible. This aligns with the ethical imperative to uphold academic integrity and the regulatory requirement to operate within established guidelines, preventing any appearance of impropriety or favoritism. An incorrect approach that involves immediately accepting the applicant based on the dean's influence, without independent verification, fails to uphold the principle of equal opportunity for all applicants. It bypasses established procedures and introduces bias, potentially violating internal university policies and any external accreditation standards that mandate fair and transparent admissions. This approach risks setting a precedent for undue influence and undermines the credibility of the admissions committee. Another incorrect approach, which is to dismiss the concerns outright without any investigation due to the urgency of enrollment figures, ignores potential systemic issues or individual misconduct. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to act responsibly. It could lead to the admission of unqualified candidates, damaging the university's academic reputation and potentially violating regulations that require a rigorous and fair admissions process. A further incorrect approach, which is to conduct a superficial review that merely rubber stamps the dean's recommendation, is also professionally unacceptable. While it may appear to address the issue, it lacks the necessary rigor and objectivity. This approach fails to provide genuine assurance that the admissions process is fair and compliant, leaving the university vulnerable to future scrutiny and potential sanctions. Professionals in such situations should employ a structured decision-making framework. This involves 1. Identifying the core issue and potential conflicts of interest. 2. Recalling and applying relevant university policies and any applicable external regulations. 3. Gathering objective evidence and conducting a thorough, impartial investigation. 4. Consulting with relevant stakeholders, such as the admissions committee or legal counsel if necessary. 5. Documenting all findings and decisions meticulously. 6. Acting in a manner that upholds the highest ethical standards and ensures compliance with all governing frameworks. Question 10. Market research demonstrates that a significant number of prospective students are inquiring about Alsham private universities programs, leading to a large influx of personal data collected during the initial application and inquiry phase. The admissions department is concerned about the efficiency of their current data management system and its potential for misuse. Which of the following represents the most appropriate course of action for the admissions department to ensure compliance and ethical data handling? Option A. Continue with the existing data management practices, assuming that the data is secure and that no immediate action is required until a specific issue arises. Option B. Implement a new, more complex data tracking system without consulting existing policies or seeking legal counsel, prioritizing speed over thoroughness. Option C. Immediately share the collected prospective student data with the university's marketing team to identify potential candidates for future outreach programs beyond the current admissions cycle. Option D. Conduct a thorough review of the data collection and storage procedures, cross-referencing them with Alsham private universities' data protection policies and relevant local regulations to identify and rectify any potential privacy risks or compliance gaps. The correct answer is D. Conduct a thorough review of the data collection and storage procedures, cross-referencing them with Alsham private universities' data protection policies and relevant local regulations to identify and rectify any potential privacy risks or compliance gaps. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's need for accurate and timely information with the ethical obligation to protect student privacy and comply with data protection regulations. The entrance exam context means that sensitive personal data is being collected, and any mishandling could have significant reputational and legal consequences for Alsham private university. Careful judgment is required to ensure that data is used solely for its intended purpose, and that unauthorized access or disclosure is prevented. The correct approach involves a systematic review of the data collection process, focusing on identifying potential vulnerabilities and ensuring compliance with Alsham private universities' established data protection policies and any relevant local regulations governing educational institutions. This approach is right because it prioritizes adherence to established rules and ethical standards. Specifically, it involves verifying that the data collected is necessary for the admissions process, that consent for its use is properly obtained and documented, and that robust security measures are in place to prevent breaches. This aligns with the principle of data minimization and purpose limitation, ensuring that student data is handled responsibly and ethically. An incorrect approach that involves immediately sharing the raw data with marketing departments for broader recruitment campaigns would be a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This would violate the principle of purpose limitation, as the data was collected for admissions, not general marketing. It also risks unauthorized disclosure and potential breaches of student privacy, which could lead to severe penalties under data protection laws. Another incorrect approach, which is to ignore the potential data privacy concerns and proceed with the current data collection methods without review, is also professionally unacceptable. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for regulatory compliance and ethical responsibilities, potentially exposing the university to legal action and reputational damage. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the regulatory landscape and the university's internal policies. This should be followed by a risk assessment of the current data handling practices, identifying areas of noncompliance or potential weakness. Based on this assessment, a plan for remediation or improvement should be developed, ensuring that all actions are documented and that relevant stakeholders are consulted. The framework emphasizes proactive compliance and ethical stewardship of sensitive information. Question 11. Risk assessment procedures indicate a potential significant donation is contingent upon a special financial arrangement being made for a prospective student whose academic qualifications are borderline. The university's admissions committee is aware of the donor's influence. What is the most appropriate course of action according to Alsham Private University's regulatory framework and ethical guidelines? Option A. Conduct a thorough review of the applicant's profile against all established admissions criteria and explore if the proposed financial arrangement aligns with Alsham Private University's financial aid policies and Alsham Ministry of Education guidelines for exceptional circumstances, documenting all findings and decisions. Option B. Reject the applicant outright due to their borderline academic qualifications, without considering the potential donation or the proposed financial arrangement. Option C. Seek advice from a leading private university in a neighboring country on how they handle similar situations before making a decision. Option D. Immediately approve the special financial arrangement to secure the significant donation, prioritizing the university's immediate financial needs. The correct answer is A. Conduct a thorough review of the applicant's profile against all established admissions criteria and explore if the proposed financial arrangement aligns with Alsham Private University's financial aid policies and Alsham Ministry of Education guidelines for exceptional circumstances, documenting all findings and decisions. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's immediate financial needs and the long-term integrity of its admissions process. The decision-maker must navigate potential reputational damage, ethical considerations regarding fairness and equal opportunity, and the specific regulatory framework governing private universities in Alsham. The pressure to secure funding can create a temptation to overlook established procedures, making a robust decision-making framework essential. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the Alsham Private University's internal policies and the relevant Alsham Ministry of Education regulations concerning admissions and financial aid. This approach prioritizes adherence to established governance and ethical standards. Specifically, it requires verifying that any proposed financial arrangement for the applicant aligns with the university's stated financial aid criteria and does not create a conflict of interest or violate principles of equitable treatment for all applicants. This aligns with the Alsham Private University's commitment to academic integrity and fair admissions, as likely stipulated in its charter and operational guidelines, and upholds the Ministry of Education's mandate for transparent and equitable educational access. An incorrect approach would be to immediately approve the special financial arrangement based solely on the potential for significant donation. This bypasses the necessary due diligence and risks, setting a precedent that compromises the university's admission standards. Such an action could be seen as a violation of Alsham Private University's internal policies on admissions and financial aid, and potentially contravene Ministry of Education directives on preventing undue influence in the admissions process, thereby jeopardizing the university's accreditation and reputation. Another incorrect approach would be to reject the applicant outright without a proper assessment of their qualifications and the proposed financial arrangement. This could lead to a loss of a potentially valuable student and donor, and might be perceived as discriminatory if the rejection is not based on objective admissions criteria. It fails to explore legitimate avenues for supporting deserving students, which might be permitted under specific Alsham regulations for exceptional circumstances. A third incorrect approach would be to seek external advice from a competitor institution without first consulting Alsham private universities' own internal policies and the Alsham Ministry of Education guidelines. While external perspectives can be valuable, the primary obligation is to adhere to the specific regulatory and ethical framework governing Alsham Private University. Relying on external advice without internal validation could lead to misinterpretations of Alsham's specific legal and regulatory landscape. The professional decision-making process should involve 1. Identifying the core issue, balancing financial opportunity with ethical admissions. 2. Gathering relevant information, reviewing university policies, Ministry of Education regulations, and the applicant's profile. 3. Evaluating options against established criteria, assessing each potential course of action for compliance and ethical soundness. 4. Consulting relevant stakeholders, engaging with the admissions committee, finance department, and legal counsel if necessary within the bounds of Alsham's regulatory framework. 5. Making a reasoned decision, choosing the option that best upholds the university's integrity and complies with all applicable laws and guidelines. Question 12. The monitoring system demonstrates an unusual pattern of activity related to a student's submission for a core course assignment, specifically a high degree of similarity with previously submitted work from other students, but the exact source of the similarity is not immediately clear from the system's initial report. Option A. Forward the raw similarity report directly to the student for their explanation, without any prior internal review or consultation. Option B. Conduct a preliminary review of the student's submission and compare it against the identified similar works to understand the nature and extent of the overlap before consulting with the academic integrity officer. Option C. Immediately flag the student for academic misconduct and initiate disciplinary proceedings based on the similarity report. Option D. Dismiss the similarity report as a potential system error and take no further action. Correct answer is C. Immediately flag the student for academic misconduct and initiate disciplinary proceedings based on the similarity report. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an individual to interpret complex information from a monitoring system and make a decision that has significant implications for the university's reputation and compliance. The challenge lies in discerning the true nature of the observed activity, whether it represents a minor deviation or a serious breach of academic integrity, and acting appropriately without causing undue alarm or overlooking a critical issue. Careful judgment is required to balance the need for thorough investigation with the potential for misinterpretation or overreaction. The correct approach involves a systematic and evidence-based process. It begins with a thorough review of the monitoring system's output to gather all relevant data points and contextual information. This is followed by consulting the Alsham private university's established academic integrity policy and relevant internal guidelines. The next crucial step is to seek clarification and guidance from the designated academic integrity officer or a relevant senior academic administrator. This ensures that the interpretation of the data aligns with the university's official stance and procedures, and that any subsequent actions are taken through the proper channels. This approach is correct because it prioritizes due process, adherence to established regulations, and collaborative decision-making, thereby safeguarding the university's commitment to academic honesty and fairness. An incorrect approach would be to immediately assume a breach of academic integrity based solely on the initial observation, without further investigation or consultation. This could lead to premature accusations, damage to a student's reputation, and potential legal repercussions for the university if the assumption proves false. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the monitoring system's alert, deeming it insignificant without proper assessment. This failure to investigate a potential breach could undermine the university's academic standards and create an environment where academic misconduct goes unchecked, violating the university's duty to uphold integrity. A third incorrect approach would be to bypass established university procedures and attempt to resolve the matter independently without involving the appropriate authorities. This circumvents the established governance structure, potentially leading to inconsistent or unfair outcomes and a lack of accountability. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that emphasizes information gathering, policy adherence, consultation, and due process. This framework involves 1. Objective observation and data collection. 2. Understanding and applying relevant policies and regulations. 3. Seeking expert advice and consultation from designated authorities. 4. Making a decision based on evidence and established procedures. 5. Documenting all steps taken and decisions made. Question 13. Investigation of potential adjustments to Alsham private universities' admissions criteria to enhance socioeconomic diversity, without violating the university's established entrance examination regulations and admission guidelines. Option A. Create a separate, informal review panel to assess the socioeconomic status of applicants, whose recommendations will be used to adjust entrance examination score thresholds on a case-by-case basis. Option B. Advise applicants to highlight their socioeconomic challenges in their personal essays, assuming this will implicitly influence admissions decisions without any formal change to the regulations. Option C. Introduce a new, unwritten guideline for admissions officers to give preferential consideration to applicants from lower socioeconomic backgrounds during the review of entrance examination scores. Option D. Propose a formal amendment to the Alsham private university admission regulations to include a socioeconomic background consideration, following the university's established policy review and approval process. The correct answer is D. Propose a formal amendment to the Alsham private university admission regulations to include a socioeconomic background consideration, following the university's established policy review and approval process. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's desire to attract a diverse student body and the absolute necessity of adhering to Alsham private university's established admission regulations. The admissions committee must exercise careful judgment to ensure that any proposed adjustments to the admissions process do not inadvertently violate the spirit or letter of the university's governing policies, which are designed to ensure fairness and meritocracy. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the existing Alsham private university admission regulations to identify any provisions that might allow for discretionary consideration of exceptional circumstances, or, if such provisions are absent, to initiate a formal proposal for policy amendment through the appropriate university channels. This approach is correct because it prioritizes regulatory compliance and ethical conduct. By seeking to operate within the established framework or to formally change it, the committee upholds the integrity of the admissions process and demonstrates respect for the university's governance. This aligns with the principle of acting in accordance with established rules and procedures, a cornerstone of professional responsibility in any academic or organizational setting. An incorrect approach would be to unilaterally implement a new admissions criterion or to grant exceptions without a clear basis in the existing Alsham private university regulations. This would constitute a breach of regulatory compliance, as it bypasses the established procedures for admissions and policy modification. Ethically, it undermines fairness and could lead to perceptions of favoritism or bias, damaging the university's reputation. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the potential impact on the diversity of the student body and strictly adhere to the existing regulations without considering if they inadvertently create barriers. While seemingly compliant, this approach fails to engage with the broader ethical imperative of fostering an inclusive environment, which may be an implicit or explicit goal of the university's mission, and could be addressed through policy review and amendment. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic evaluation of the problem against the relevant regulatory framework. This includes understanding the precise wording and intent of all applicable policies. If a policy appears to hinder a desirable outcome, the professional should explore avenues for policy interpretation or formal amendment, rather than circumventing existing rules. Transparency and consultation with relevant stakeholders, such as the university's legal counsel or academic governance bodies, are also crucial steps in ensuring that decisions are both compliant and ethically sound. Question 14. The assessment process reveals that during a critical entrance examination for Alsham Private University, an invigilator observes a candidate discreetly using a small, pre-written note that appears to contain answers. The invigilator is aware of the university's strict academic integrity policy, which mandates specific procedures for handling suspected cheating. What is the most appropriate course of action for the invigilator to take immediately? Option A. Ignore the observation to avoid disrupting the examination and address it only if the candidate's performance seems unusually high. Option B. Discreetly document the observation, including the nature of the note and the candidate's actions, and report it to the chief invigilator or designated examination authority as per Alsham Private University's academic integrity guidelines. Option C. Immediately approach the candidate, confiscate the note, and inform them that they are being disqualified for cheating. Option D. Quietly discuss the observation with another invigilator to confirm their suspicions before taking any action. Correct answer is B. Discreetly document the observation, including the nature of the note and the candidate's actions, and report it to the chief invigilator or designated examination authority as per Alsham Private University's academic integrity guidelines. Explanation. The assessment process for the Alsham Private University entrance exam requires candidates to demonstrate a thorough understanding of regulatory compliance within the context of the university's operational framework. This scenario is professionally challenging because it tests the ability to apply specific university regulations to a practical situation, requiring a nuanced understanding of ethical conduct and adherence to established procedures. The pressure of an entrance exam necessitates a clear, decisive, and compliant response, making careful judgment paramount. The correct approach involves prioritizing the integrity of the examination process and adhering strictly to the Alsham Private University's stated examination regulations regarding academic integrity and the handling of suspected misconduct. This approach is right because it directly upholds the university's commitment to fair and honest assessment, as mandated by its internal academic policies. Specifically, the university's regulations likely outline a clear protocol for addressing suspected academic dishonesty, which typically involves discreetly documenting the observation and reporting it to the designated examination invigilator or academic integrity officer for further investigation, rather than confronting the student directly or ignoring the issue. This ensures due process for the student and maintains the credibility of the examination. An incorrect approach of directly confronting the student during the exam is professionally unacceptable because it could disrupt the examination for other candidates, potentially lead to an unwarranted accusation, and bypass the university's established disciplinary procedures. This violates the principle of fair process and could create an adversarial environment. Another incorrect approach of ignoring the observed behavior is also professionally unacceptable, as it constitutes a failure to uphold academic integrity and a dereliction of duty as an invigilator. This undermines the university's standards and allows for potential academic misconduct to go unaddressed, which is a direct violation of the university's regulatory framework on academic honesty. A third incorrect approach of discussing the observation with other invigilators during the exam, without following the official reporting channel, is also problematic as it could lead to gossip, premature judgment, and a breach of confidentiality regarding the suspected misconduct, again, deviating from the prescribed protocol. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic approach. First, observe and document the suspected misconduct objectively and discreetly. Second, consult the Alsham Private University's examination regulations to identify the specific policy being potentially violated and the prescribed procedure for handling such incidents. Third, follow the outlined procedure precisely, which typically involves reporting the observation to the appropriate authority, e.g., Chief Invigilator, Examination Board, without direct confrontation or discussion with unauthorized personnel. Finally, cooperate fully with any subsequent investigation, providing factual accounts of the observation. This structured approach ensures compliance, fairness, and the maintenance of academic standards. Question 15. Cost-benefit analysis shows that a proposed new interdisciplinary degree program at Alsham Private University could generate significant tuition revenue within 3 years. However, the program requires the development of new specialized laboratory equipment and the recruitment of faculty with niche expertise, incurring substantial upfront costs and ongoing operational expenses. According to Alsham Private University's internal academic program development guidelines, what is the primary consideration when evaluating the feasibility of such a proposal? Option A. The alignment of the proposed program with Alsham Private University's mission, academic standards, and resource availability, as outlined in its internal regulatory framework. Option B, the demand for the program among prospective students and the competitive landscape of similar offerings at other institutions. Option C, the projected return on investment and the speed at which the initial capital expenditure can be recouped. Option D, the potential for the program to enhance Alsham private universities' research output and international rankings. The correct answer is D, the potential for the program to enhance Alsham private universities' research output and international rankings. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the potential benefits of a new initiative against its associated costs, while strictly adhering to the Alsham private university's regulatory framework for academic program development. The challenge lies in interpreting and applying the university's specific guidelines, which likely prioritize student welfare, academic integrity, and resource allocation over purely financial considerations. A thorough understanding of these internal regulations is paramount to ensure compliance and ethical conduct. The correct approach involves a comprehensive evaluation that goes beyond a simple financial cost-benefit analysis. It necessitates a deep dive into the Alsham private universities' established policies and procedures for introducing new academic programs. This includes assessing the pedagogical value, alignment with the university's mission, faculty expertise, student demand, and the long-term sustainability of the program, all within the bounds of the university's governance and regulatory framework. This approach is correct because it prioritizes the core academic mission and regulatory compliance of Alsham Private University, ensuring that any new program is not only financially viable, but also academically sound and ethically responsible, as mandated by the university's internal regulations. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate financial returns without considering the broader academic and regulatory implications would be professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a disregard for the Alsham private university's established procedures for program approval, which are designed to safeguard the quality of education and the university's reputation. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes expediency over thorough due diligence, such as fast-tracking approval without adequate consultation with relevant academic departments or the Curriculum Review Committee, violate the university's governance structure and potentially lead to the implementation of a substandard program. This demonstrates a lack of commitment to the rigorous standards expected within the Alsham private university's regulatory environment. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic review of all applicable Alsham private university regulations and policies. This includes identifying stakeholders, gathering relevant data beyond financial metrics, consulting with academic and administrative units, and ensuring that the proposed initiative aligns with the university's strategic objectives and ethical commitments. A structured approach, guided by the university's internal governance and regulatory framework, is essential for making sound and compliant decisions. Question 16. When evaluating an applicant's submission for the Alsham private university entrance exam, and the applicant's academic record appears strong but slightly deviates from a specific, minor requirement listed in the general guidelines, what is the most appropriate course of action to ensure regulatory compliance and fairness? Option A. Seek to influence the admissions committee to make an exception for this applicant due to their perceived potential, leveraging personal connections if necessary. Option B. Consider the applicant's overall potential and other strong qualifications, and admit them if they are deemed likely to succeed, even if a minor requirement is not fully met. Option C. Strictly adhere to the published admission criteria, and if the applicant does not meet all specified requirements, they are deemed ineligible, regardless of other strengths. Option D. Develop a new, informal criterion specifically for this applicant that acknowledges their strengths while addressing the minor deviation, without formally updating the published guidelines. The correct answer is C. Strictly adhere to the published admission criteria, and if the applicant does not meet all specified requirements, they are deemed ineligible, regardless of other strengths. Explanation: the scenario presents a common challenge in academic institutions, ensuring that admissions processes are fair, transparent, and compliant with the university's own regulations and any overarching educational standards. The professional challenge lies in balancing the university's desire to attract diverse and qualified students with the imperative to adhere strictly to established admission criteria and procedures. Misinterpreting or circumventing These rules can lead to accusations of bias, unfairness, and a breach of regulatory compliance, potentially damaging the university's reputation and leading to sanctions. The correct approach involves a meticulous review of the applicant's documentation against the published admission criteria for the Alsham private university entrance exam. This approach is correct because it directly upholds the principle of regulatory compliance and fairness. By adhering strictly to the established criteria, the university demonstrates its commitment to a standardized and equitable admissions process, as mandated by its own internal regulations and the broader framework governing private higher education institutions. This ensures that all applicants are assessed on the same objective grounds, preventing any perception of favoritism or arbitrary decision-making. An incorrect approach that prioritizes a candidate's perceived potential over documented qualifications fails to adhere to the established admission criteria. This is a regulatory failure because it bypasses the defined standards for admission, undermining the integrity of the entrance exam process. It introduces subjective judgment where objective criteria are required, potentially leading to unfairness and a breach of the university's own admission policies. Another incorrect approach that involves seeking external influence or special consideration for an applicant outside of the formal application and review process constitutes a significant ethical and regulatory failure. This undermines the transparency and fairness of the admissions process. It suggests that the established rules can be circumvented through personal connections, which is contrary to the principles of meritocracy and equal opportunity that should govern university admissions. Such actions can lead to a loss of public trust and potential disciplinary action. A further incorrect approach that involves creating new, unannounced criteria for a specific applicant is also a clear violation of regulatory compliance. This demonstrates a lack of adherence to established procedures and a disregard for the fairness expected in an admissions process. It creates an uneven playing field and can lead to legal challenges and reputational damage. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should begin with a thorough understanding of the Alsham private university's admission regulations and guidelines. When faced with an applicant who presents unique circumstances or potential, the first step is always to consult the official documentation. If the situation is ambiguous, seeking clarification from the admissions committee or the relevant regulatory body within the university is crucial. Decisions must be based on objective evidence and adherence to established procedures, ensuring transparency and fairness for all applicants. The focus should always be on upholding the integrity of the admissions process and complying with all applicable regulations. Question 17. The performance metrics show a statistically significant dip in the average scores across multiple sections of the Alsham private university entrance exam compared to previous cohorts, raising concerns about the exam's current effectiveness. What is the most appropriate next step to address this situation, strictly adhering to the Alsham private university entrance exam regulations? Option A. Recommend a significant increase in the difficulty of future exam versions to ensure only the most academically rigorous candidates are admitted. Option B. Initiate a comprehensive review of the exam's content validity, question design, and administration procedures to identify potential systemic issues. Option C. Immediately revise the exam scoring rubric to lower the passing threshold, aiming to maintain historical acceptance rates. Option D. Advise the admissions committee to disregard the recent performance metrics as a potential statistical outlier and proceed with standard admission criteria. The correct answer is C. Immediately revise the exam scoring rubric to lower the passing threshold, aiming to maintain historical acceptance rates. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's stated commitment to academic integrity with the practical pressures of student retention and institutional reputation. The entrance exam is a critical gatekeeper, and its perceived fairness and effectiveness directly impact the university's standing. Misinterpreting or misapplying the established examination regulations can lead to significant ethical breaches and potential legal repercussions, undermining the very foundation of academic assessment. The correct approach involves a thorough and objective review of the performance metrics against the established Alsham private university entrance exam regulations. This means identifying specific areas where performance deviates from expected benchmarks, and then investigating whether these deviations are attributable to flaws in the examination design, administration, or the student's preparation, rather than solely to the student's inherent capabilities. The Alsham Private University Entrance Exam Regulations, as stipulated in the university's charter, mandate that all assessments must be fair, transparent, and accurately reflect a candidate's aptitude for higher education. Therefore, any proposed changes to the examination must be directly supported by evidence demonstrating how these changes will improve the validity and reliability of the assessment process in line with these regulatory principles. This approach prioritizes adherence to the governing framework and ensures that any adjustments are data-driven and ethically sound, upholding the integrity of the admissions process. An incorrect approach would be to immediately propose a significant alteration to the exam's difficulty or format based on a superficial interpretation of the performance metrics. This fails to acknowledge the Alsham Private University Entrance Exam Regulations' emphasis on a systematic and evidence-based approach to assessment modification. Such a hasty decision could inadvertently penalize deserving candidates or admit underprepared ones, violating the principle of fair assessment. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss the performance metrics as an anomaly without further investigation. This neglects the university's responsibility under its charter to continuously evaluate and improve its assessment processes. Ignoring potential systemic issues within the examination itself, rather than focusing on student performance in isolation, is a failure to uphold the regulatory requirement for a robust and responsive admissions system. Professionals facing similar situations should employ a structured decision-making process. First, they must clearly understand the governing Alsham Private University Entrance Exam Regulations and the university's mission regarding admissions. Second, they should gather and analyze all relevant data, looking for patterns and potential causes for the observed performance. Third, they must consult with relevant stakeholders, such as examination committees and academic advisors, to gain diverse perspectives. Fourth, any proposed solutions must be evaluated against the regulatory framework for their fairness, validity, and ethical implications. Finally, decisions should be documented, with clear justifications rooted in the Alsham Private University Entrance Exam Regulations and best practices in educational assessment. Question 18. Analysis of the process for handling a prospective student's inquiry regarding the specific academic performance metrics used by Alsham Private University to evaluate international applicants, where the student is requesting direct access to this internal evaluation data before submitting their application. Option A. Immediately provide the student with a detailed breakdown of the academic performance metrics and their weighting in the admissions process, as well as an estimation of how their previously submitted unofficial transcripts might fare against these benchmarks. Option B. Advise the student to contact their previous educational institutions to obtain official reports on their academic performance and submit these directly to Alsham Private University for review. Option C. Consult Alsham Private University's official admissions policy and data privacy guidelines to determine the permissible scope of information that can be shared with prospective applicants regarding evaluation criteria and their own preliminary academic standing. Option D. Inform the student that all evaluation criteria are confidential and that they will only be informed of the final admissions decision after the complete application review process. The correct answer is C. Consult Alsham Private University's official admissions policy and data privacy guidelines to determine the permissible scope of information that can be shared with prospective applicants regarding evaluation criteria and their own preliminary academic standing. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's perceived need for immediate access to academic records and the university's obligation to protect sensitive personal data and maintain the integrity of its admissions process. The university must balance transparency with privacy and security, adhering strictly to its own internal policies and any relevant national data protection regulations applicable to educational institutions in Alsham. The core of the challenge lies in interpreting and applying these regulations to a specific, time-sensitive request from a prospective student. The correct approach involves a thorough review of Alsham Private University's official admissions policy and its data privacy guidelines. This approach is correct because it directly addresses the student's request within the established legal and institutional framework. By consulting these documents, the admissions officer can determine the precise information that can be disclosed, the conditions under which it can be disclosed, and the appropriate channels for such disclosure. This ensures compliance with Alsham's internal regulations and any overarching data protection laws, safeguarding both the student's privacy and the university's operational integrity. It demonstrates a commitment to due process and responsible data handling. An incorrect approach that involves immediately providing the student with detailed academic performance metrics from their previous institution without verification or adherence to policy is ethically and regulatorily unsound. This fails to respect the privacy of the student's prior academic records, which may be subject to separate data protection agreements or regulations of the previous institution. It also bypasses the established admissions review process, potentially compromising the fairness and integrity of the Alsham private university's admissions decisions. Another incorrect approach, which is to dismiss the student's request outright without offering any guidance or explanation, is professionally unhelpful and potentially damaging to the university's reputation. While it avoids unauthorized disclosure, it fails to uphold the university's responsibility to guide prospective students through the admissions process and to provide information within the bounds of its policies. This approach lacks the professional courtesy and transparency expected of an educational institution. A third incorrect approach, which is to ask the student to obtain the information directly from their previous institution and submit it without any university oversight, shifts the burden inappropriately and could lead to the submission of incomplete or unverified data. This approach fails to acknowledge the university's role in assessing the suitability of applicants based on official documentation and could introduce inaccuracies into the admissions file. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should begin with identifying the core request and the relevant stakeholders. Next, the professional must consult the applicable policies and regulations of the institution and the governing jurisdiction. This involves understanding what information can be shared, how it can be shared, and who is authorized to receive it. If there is ambiguity, seeking clarification from a supervisor or the legal department is crucial. The decision should always prioritize compliance, ethical conduct, and the best interests of both the applicant and the institution. Question 19. System analysis indicates that the Alsham Private University Admissions Committee has received an application from a candidate whose academic qualifications appear to fall slightly below the published minimum entry requirements. However, a prominent local dignitary has contacted the admissions office, strongly advocating for the candidate's acceptance, citing the candidate's potential and the dignitary's personal endorsement. The admissions committee is now deliberating on how to proceed, aiming to uphold the university's commitment to academic excellence and fair admissions. Which of the following approaches best navigates this situation according to Alsham Private University's regulatory framework and ethical guidelines? Option A. Reject the application outright due to the perceived pressure to avoid any appearance of impropriety without a full review of the applicant's merits. Option B. Conduct a thorough, objective review of the applicant's entire application package, including any supplementary materials or evidence of potential not captured by standard metrics, and make a decision strictly based on the university's published admission criteria and any established discretionary clauses for exceptional circumstances, while documenting the external communication. Option C. Immediately approve the application for admission, acknowledging the influential party's request as a significant factor in the decision to demonstrate responsiveness and maintain good relations. Option D. Inform the influential party that the application is being reviewed, but subtly delay the formal decision-making process to allow for further informal discussions or to gauge the persistence of the external interest. The correct answer is B. Conduct a thorough, objective review of the applicant's entire application package, including any supplementary materials or evidence of potential not captured by standard metrics, and make a decision strictly based on the university's published admission criteria and any established discretionary clauses for exceptional circumstances, while documenting the external communication. Explanation. The scenario presents a challenge in balancing the university's commitment to academic integrity with the practicalities of managing student admissions under pressure. The core professional challenge lies in upholding the Alsham Private University's stated admission policies and ethical standards when faced with external influence and potential reputational risk. Careful judgment is required to ensure that decisions are fair, transparent, and compliant with the university's own regulatory framework, and any applicable national educational guidelines for private institutions in Alsham. The correct approach involves a thorough, objective review of the applicant's qualifications against the published admission criteria, without succumbing to external pressure or personal bias. This upholds the principle of merit-based admissions, which is fundamental to academic integrity and the university's reputation. Specifically, it aligns with the Alsham Private University's stated commitment to fair and transparent admissions processes, ensuring that all applicants are evaluated on the same objective standards. This approach also preempts potential accusations of favoritism or corruption, which could damage the university's standing. An incorrect approach that involves immediate acceptance based on the influential party's request fails to adhere to the university's admission policies and compromises academic integrity. This bypasses the established review process, setting a dangerous precedent for future admissions and potentially admitting underqualified students, thereby lowering academic standards. It also violates ethical principles of fairness and equal opportunity for all applicants. Another incorrect approach, which is to defer the decision indefinitely or to delay the review process, is also professionally unacceptable. This tactic avoids a direct confrontation but does not resolve the issue and can be perceived as evasive or as an indirect attempt to appease the influential party without formally violating policy. It creates uncertainty for the applicant and the admissions committee and can still lead to accusations of impropriety if the delay is seen as a means to eventually grant an unfair advantage. A professional decision-making process in such situations should begin with a clear understanding of the university's admission policies and ethical guidelines. The professional should then objectively assess the applicant's credentials against these established criteria. If external influence is applied, the professional should politely but firmly reiterate the university's commitment to its policies and the importance of an impartial review process. Documentation of all communications and decisions is crucial. If the pressure persists or involves potential ethical breaches, escalating the matter to the appropriate university authority or ethics committee should be considered. The focus must always remain on upholding the integrity of the institution and its academic standards. Question 20. System analysis indicates a need to evaluate the effectiveness of the Alsham Private University Entrance Exams online application portal for the upcoming admissions cycle. To achieve this, the admissions department wishes to analyze applicant data, including demographic information and test scores, to identify potential bottlenecks and areas for improvement in the application process. However, the university is bound by Alsham Private University's internal data privacy policy, which mandates strict protection of applicant personal information. Which of the following approaches best balances the need for system analysis with the university's data privacy obligations? Option A. Obtain a general consent from all applicants during the application process to use their identifiable data for any internal system analysis purposes. Option B. Postpone the system analysis until after the entire admissions cycle is complete and all applicant data has been finalized and archived. Option C. Conduct the system analysis using the raw, identifiable applicant data, assuming that internal access is sufficiently controlled. Option D. Anonymize all applicant data, removing any personally identifiable information before conducting the system analysis. The correct answer is D. Anonymize all applicant data, removing any personally identifiable information before conducting the system analysis. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's immediate need for admissions data and the strict adherence to data privacy regulations. The university entrance exam is a critical juncture where sensitive personal information is collected, and any mishandling can lead to severe legal repercussions and reputational damage. Careful judgment is required to balance operational efficiency with legal and ethical obligations. The correct approach involves anonymizing the data before it is used for system analysis. This aligns with the principles of data minimization and purpose limitation, which are fundamental to data protection laws. By removing personally identifiable information, the university ensures that the analysis does not compromise the privacy of applicants, thereby adhering to the spirit and letter of data privacy regulations. This proactive measure prevents potential breaches and demonstrates a commitment to responsible data handling. An incorrect approach would be to directly use the raw, identifiable applicant data for system analysis. This directly violates data privacy principles by exposing sensitive information without explicit consent for that specific purpose, increasing the risk of unauthorized access or disclosure. It fails to implement appropriate technical and organizational measures to protect personal data. Another incorrect approach is to delay the system analysis until all applicant data has been fully processed and verified, even if anonymized data could be used. This approach, while seemingly cautious, can lead to inefficiencies and missed opportunities for timely system improvement. It does not leverage available data responsibly and may hinder the university's ability to adapt its admissions processes based on early insights. A further incorrect approach is to seek broad consent from applicants to use their identifiable data for any internal analysis without specifying the exact nature and purpose of the analysis. This is ethically questionable and may not meet the legal standard for informed consent, as applicants may not fully understand the implications of granting such broad permissions. It risks overstepping the boundaries of acceptable data usage. The professional reasoning process in such situations should involve a risk assessment of data usage, a thorough understanding of applicable data privacy regulations, and the implementation of data anonymization or pseudonymization techniques where feasible. Professionals should prioritize data protection by design and by default, ensuring that data handling practices are both legally compliant and ethically sound. When in doubt, seeking legal counsel or consulting with data protection officers is crucial.